What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio. We are the podcast for preparedness. Started off many, many years ago as an actual radio show on AM radio. And we've devolved and then evolved. And now we're doing this all digital. You can find us over at YouTube. You can find us on every podcast platform. Wherever you stream, you're going to find us. We are the radio, the podcast for the prepared. Our focus here is about God, family, and country. And honestly, all of those are in danger every day. Someone is trying to mess with your life pretty much every day. And so our goal is to help provide you with knowledge, different ways to think about preparedness, kind of living the ready way and being better prepared for whatever might come. Now, today's scenario, whatever time of day, this morning, wherever you are, whenever you are, the scenario is you lost everything, all your preps, gone. What would you do different? How would you start over? And we got Shane and Paris in the house with me to go over this important conversation because honestly, if this happened to me, there'd be a lot of changes I'd make. I think hopefully I've gained some wisdom, but there are definitely some changes I would make. But what would you do, Shane?
Well, it'd definitely be more efficient this time around, right? I mean, it would make fewer mistakes, spend less money on mistakes, right? But I guess my biggest question as I was going through this in my mind is, to what extent? I mean, how much are you losing like the entire house? You get wiped out in an earthquake and you're starting from scratch, or are we just talking about just kind of preps? You know, you already got the basis there, you know.
If you want to go all out,
do whatever, whichever one.
Because here's the reason I'm going to say house fire, because it's devastating.
Yeah,
and you're going to lose all your stuff, not just your preps, all your stuff, and you're starting over, right? So let's just say you do have homeowners insurance, and let's just say you were smart enough to take all of your personal belongings and categorize them and take pictures of them and put them on a database on the cloud that you can then just email that whole list over to your insurance, adjuster, and make sure you get all your stuff. For example, all my food storage is in an Excel sheet. So I can just email that over and say, here's all the food that was in my storehouse. Replace it. Right. But diamond rings, gold, silver, guns, anything else you can think of, like, do you have those things listed? You know what you have, so you can actually return for the claim. But let's just say the scenario is you lost it all.
Well, insurance, just a quick side note, insurance will not cover cash in your safe, right? I don't think it'll cover gold or silver in a safe either, because, I mean, first of all, you can't destroy gold and silver. It's going to melt. It's going to change form, maybe, depending on the extent of the fire or whatever.
Some policies will collect or will reimburse you for those losses if they are collectibles.
Okay, right. No, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yep.
Fair enough.
So my baseball card that I have might still be worth something. But some of my collectible silver, obviously, but the other silver, I'll just have to dig through the piles of what's left.
Right. And just say, okay, here's an ounce, here's an ounce, and so forth.
Yeah.
Right?
Your numismatics might be available to get reimbursed, but your regular rounds probably you're going to be they won't be rounds, they'll be globs.
They depend on how good your safe is, right? But yeah,
so here's an example. When he says numismatics, I was saying collectibles, right? It's the same thing,
right? And hopefully you don't have too many of them, honestly, because you pay a higher premium, and
they're fun to have, but not
they
essential.
can be. Yeah, exactly. We like ounces. We like ounces.
My dad's got a 1942 silver dollar.
Wow,
that thing's sweet. He got it from his father, who got it from his father. That is probably the coolest piece of silver I've ever seen, just because of the history of it.
Yeah, and he didn't have to pay a premium on it too either.
He didn't have to pay a dime for it. It was given to him. He gifted. I'm like, dude, that's a sweet little gift. But okay, I digress.
Okay, so
lose it. Now what?
I would start, and we'll start the conversation, is, and I mean, assuming we're lost everything, right? Which is impractical, right? It's just as a practice, right? This is
a practice. Yeah,
this is what it is.
What would you do differently, if anything, to rebuild your preps?
I would start with my EDC, is where I would start, right? I would start with, the knife, the tool, the firearms, the watch, everything I carry on myself, as well as, the shoes, the jacket, just what I would typically go out into my day,
To the wild.
Into the wild. Yeah, absolutely. Into the concrete jungle, right? Which is my life, unfortunately, most every day. And so, I mean, I could get into specifics, but, looking back to where I started, I've actually have moved my blog over to Substack. So I'm going through my old articles, reading some of the my recommendations for firearms or handguns, and things have changed in the past 10 plus. It's been longer, about 10 years since I started that blog. And man, my way of thinking has changed significantly since then. So I would definitely go about things different. Now I know exactly what I like. I mean, it's quite the process. So I mean, the firearms have changed from maybe a revolver up front to the the PX4, Beretta PX4, right? I mean, that's kind of what I've settled on lately. And of course, the knife I showed you last time. I'm a Swiss tool guy. I'll always stick with the Swiss tools. My
have your Phoenix Light.
My Phoenix lights. Yeah, I mean, I've gone through a couple different models, but Phoenix is. And I'm sure I didn't know about Phoenix back then either. I don't remember what I was carrying, but that's where I would start. I would start with my EDC, and I would also maybe my 1A, 1B would be my go bag. So if it, and of course I'm just thinking about myself at this point. If we want to bring the family in and all that way, and that's going to take even more time than we have to go through those types. So that's where I would start. I would start with the go bag and the EDC.
Interesting. So your first thing is what you're going to carry around is kind of your thought.
Absolutely. And I kind of think of myself, okay, if there's an immediate emergency at that point, after I've lost everything, what are the absolute essentials I've got to have at that minute? And for me, that's EDC.
That's okay. I didn't even think that route at all.
Okay, cool. Go for
it. I went, so you zigged. I tripped, stumbled, and zagged.
Mine isn't necessarily the right way, right? That's just my way, right?
Well, I think the beauty of that is we're going to see a couple different perspectives, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Prioritizations. So my first thing is, okay, I lost my house. I've got to find a place to live, temporary residence or permanent, whatever. But then I went through and I'm like, okay, I've got all these water tanks gone. I've got all this food storage gone. I've got no shelter. So, okay, get a place to live. I'm not even worried about okay, I've got the clothes on my back and that's it, right? I'm not worried about beds yet. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. This is, some people are going to look at me, listen to this and go, Scott, you're a moron. Other people are going to go, Scott, you're a genius. And other people are going to go, huh?
I don't get it.
But here's the thing. We have water dropped off at our door every month with this service called Mount Olympus. There's there's companies in every city. You can go get 5-gallon tanks dropped at your house.
Right. The water
cooler.
We
have water coolers. So we got a water cooler and we got all that water. And I'm like, dude, tap water is horrible. It's garbage. We get that stuff. We have spring water and we have distilled water and we have filtered water. That stuff stays in those blue containers really nicely protected for over a year, no problem. I don't have to rotate it. And here's the cool thing. If I am rotating it, they're going to come take care of it for me. I put one out on the porch on the 13th of the month, and they get a new one to pull in off the porch, fresh and sealed and ready to go. That would be my immediate water solution. And just have those shipped. Now, the cheaper way to go buy 3 or 4 of those from Walmart or wherever else you can get the 5-gallon tanks. Just to have water. Boom. Number 2, I would go get first aid. Make sure we restockpile all the medicines we need immediately. All the supplements we need immediately. This is before food. I would get those things and a first aid kit. Solid, serious first aid kits. Typically a larger trauma style kit. I want, because I've got tourniquets. I've got blood clot factors. I've got all these things that I'm like, I just want to make sure I have that back again. Then I jump on the food. And I would go to the store and I would buy a 50-pound bag of rice and 2 25-pound bags of beans. while I'm waiting for money to come through, and while I'm waiting to get access to everything, hopefully I've still got my bank accounts and I've got some money that I can go get more stuff while I'm waiting. But I would get that, and then I'd buy a whole bunch of macaroni and cheese, those little individual person size ones. Individual serving cups. A person size one, a 6 foot tall
That's
cup.
huge.
No.
That's a lot of money.
But because that's one of my kids' favorite things to eat. And I'd probably go buy like 10 boxes of those and just have them there. Boom. And I'd like that, to me, is where I start. And with the beans, I'd hit half black, half navy, and or maybe go into
kidney and black or something.
Into more options. But the reason I pick that is because rice and beans together becomes a perfect protein. And it's extremely filling. It's a healthier choice than a lot of other things. It's super easy to cook. It's time consuming.
Mm-hmm. But of course, the question is, will your family eat it, right? Get what your family's going to eat.
And they do. That's why I'm like, I'm not going to go buy wheat. I'm not going to go
right.
There's so much other stuff to deal with when you start looking at bigger, more compound things. But at least that way I could buy a 3-month supply of food storage and have that set. And then I can start expanding back into my pantry and focusing on my pantry stuff. Right. That's like where my mind goes first. Shelter, water, medical, food. I was like, I'll get guns and I'll get knives and I'll get all the other tools and stuff later. But I'm like, I need to get these things now. And then I was like, immediately when I got into tools, as soon as I had some food, I'm like, okay, I need a pot to cook it in. And I've got my water coming out of the little tap thing. It come out hot if I need to, or cold if I need to.
Your pot's melted too, huh? In the fire, huh, Scott?
Everything. Well, all your Teflon coated pots are going to burn. They're going to melt. They're not going to be safe to use anymore.
Yeah.
And all of ours are the stupid Teflon coated ones. Actually, I do have
stainless
got
steel,
some Dutch oven in the garage, and I've got a skillet in the garage. Hopefully those survive.
Those should survive. That'd be some pretty darn hot fire to burn that.
But I'll need to
the cast iron stuff should make it.
All my cast iron stuff will be fine. But I will probably need to re-season it just to make sure we're good to go. But
burned out.
All the other cooking stuff, like there's a lot of implements that would be gone.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, if I don't have a house to be in and I'm like in a shed or a tent, okay, then I need to make sure I've got a way to cook all my food and prepare all my stuff. And I'm not going to buy anything that I need to refrigerate right off the bat, unless I have an apartment or a condo, or I'm living with someone else where there is a fridge and I can put stuff. But if I'm starting all my preps from scratch and I actually just walk into a house and here's my house again, okay, then I can buy all my normal groceries and everything else. But I would still prioritize, I think, this way, where I get a water solution first, medical solution second, including your first aids. Then I'd hit my food, and then I'd start getting my tools. And my biggest tools, I honestly didn't even think of EDC. I was like, I need a good shovel, I need a good saw, I need an axe, and I need a strong multi-function crowbar, pry bar. That was it. I have all these tools in the garage that I'm like, kiss them goodbye.
Well, I think basically
I could do a lot with.
Yeah, obviously as the patriarch, as the breadwinner, whatever you want to, and a homeowner. Homeowner is a home is a money pit, is what it is. It's constant. I mean, obviously, Scott, what you've been dealing with your house as well. But so tools is definitely on my list. It's a little bit lower down. But just like you, Scott, it was, after that came, water, food, so forth. But I've also gotten there, the next thing that came to mind was, okay, start to build and obviously your bank account didn't burn down, right? So hopefully you should already have your savings in your bank account, right? But thinking you lose everything, maybe it's a cyber attack or something too, then you'll lose everything digitally as well, right? So I think it's important to have a nest egg of some sort, kind of. Of course, I'm referring to Dave Ramsey, who says you'll get have $1,000. That's one thing of the few things I agree with what he says, right? Is building.
I think it should be more, but
egg. Oh yeah, absolutely. But that's kind of the starting place, right? That is $1,000, and then after we hit that $1,000, then then I'm gonna jump off into other preps and then come back and still continue to work on that nest egg. But that's kind of like minimum. And then I'm gonna once I hit that, then okay, I need to go and I need to pick up, depending on the situation, right? Maybe your vehicle's got torched as well. I mean, you got to restock those up, and with all the goodies and such you have in those.
That's when you look at your situation and go, is it good that I park on the street? Is it good that I park in the driveway, or is it best that I park in the house? Like, do I in the new house, do I park all my vehicles in the house going forward, or do I always park one away from the house? Like, the things to think about. Like, we have one in the garage and one in the driveway usually, but it's funny because it's like, if the house is going down and there's a car in the driveway, I can just pull that one away. But the one in the garage, I'm not going to be able to go back in and get it.
Right.
I'm going to get my kids and everybody to a safe distance, right? But yeah, there's so many different things you can think about. But yeah, it's like, okay, what's really most important? Number one, make sure my family's okay.
I didn't take it to the, your house burnt down level when you guys, so that's really, I mean, I'm thinking now differently than I originally planned, but I kind of went through this exercise myself when I moved to Utah, because when I left California, I was prompted to give away most of my preps to people that I knew that were struggling, and those that were less fortunate than I was, because I knew I would be able to. I'm moving to Utah, man. If anybody knows anything about Utah, you can get food storage for good deals in Utah. So I gave away a lot of my stuff to the local people there that in my church that needed help, or gave it, gave a huge discount, said, hey, dollar store kind of stuff, come and buy what you want, donate it if you'd like. But so when I moved here, my first thing was I didn't even think about, EDC or grab and go bag. Although now that we're talking about my house burned down, hopefully I'm grabbing my grab and go bag and still have it. But for sure,
you have all your EDC on you, hopefully anyway, as you're leaving. Yeah. But
that's a good process to think about. Like, what would you do first? So when I moved here, one of the first things I did was I bought a 260-gallon water tank, and I started filling up my 90-day pantry. And just getting the canned goods, getting those foods that we would eat, that we normally eat. Because I think that's one of the biggest problems most people do. And you brought it up, Shane, perfectly, and Scott too, that you got to get foods that your family will eat. If you're by yourself and that you got to survive on beans and rice, you'll do it, right? But your kids, trust me, you got to get something that has a little bit more taste than that. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem. But that was my thing, was just get my. I agree with the water. I didn't think about first aid before food, though. I didn't think about that. So my first thing was water and food to rebuild my 90-day pantry. And then once I had my 90 days, I started going down to the local church, the LDS storehouses, and buying those long-term, those boxes. And every week I put a little bit of Augustin Farms. The cool thing about Utah is that you can buy Augustin Farms, quite a few things right out of Walmart, or whatever the local store is.
Grocery stores, yeah.
The local grocery stores all have Augustin Farms in them, and they sell great freeze-dried and dehydrated foods. So that's what I did when I first moved to Utah. I was actually kind of in a panic. Like, I had anxiety until I had my pantry set, and I had several food storage things. And then once that was set, I was like, whew. My wife was like, what was that all about? I'm like, I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel good until I had my water and my food. Like, I just couldn't rest almost until I had a significant. And now, I mean, I got 5 kids, 4 of them in Utah. And if my son, who lives a couple cities, he lives about 15, 20 minutes away, if he came, I could probably feed us, because we do have some affiliates to like my Patriot Supply and 4 Patriots and stuff. So I bought some freeze-dried foods from those guys. But I probably feed my family now, just the whole family, for 6 months to a year, easy.
Well, that's the thing, is like, when you're resetting and restarting, you have to take into consideration your situation, right? Your family. And that's why, like, we've shared this with our group. If you want to join our group, go to Facebook and join Emergency Prep and Self-Reliance. But we have documents in there and trackers that can help you kind of prioritize where you are, what you need to focus on, and get going in the right direction. The best of those is the in my opinion, the calculator that I created where you can actually plug in how many people you have, what you have, like your food storage and everything else, what you've got in the pantry or in the fridge, plug that in and see how far that's going to last you, and then start adding based on that. But it's like, yeah, like take care of your immediate needs first, get that resolved, and get the breathing room, and then expand from that. But like I had assumed, like you, that I grab my go bags and I get out, and that's got most of my EDC stuff that I'm going to need. It's going to have a change of clothes. It's going to have a change of boots. Well, an extra pair of sneakers, but I'll have clothes for everybody in the family. So then I'd want to start getting just the regular living stuff stocked up too. But yeah,
I'll be
so
honest
many
though.
things.
Shane, you really got me thinking, because my grab and go bag is probably twice as big as it needs to be. And so when I first got into prepping, I was like, oh my gosh, I need this. Oh my gosh, I need that. Like there's 5 different lists that I downloaded from Pinterest, and I talked to you guys, and like there's all these lists that I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get all this stuff. And I filled up this bag, and I got this big old bag now. It probably weighs way too much. And so as I go through it, I'm thinking, I don't need 15 ways to light a fire. I just need one. I don't need, 7 ways to, cook my food. I need just 1 or 2. But that's a good point. Like we're going to talk about, in our next episode, we're going to have some talk about how much is too much, and things of that nature. So, but at the same time, if it's a grab and go bag, you need to have it, modulated so that you're not overwhelmed. You don't want to have too much redundancy in a grab and go bag, because you need it to be light. You need it to be quick. You need it to be grab and go and get out of there.
Exactly.
Not 17,000 pounds. Let me freaking put the waistband on and the straps on just so I can carry it out.
Well, we've talked about, the more you know, the less you need. And so that's kind of where my list took off from there. Is, I can do with a lot less than I actually have, but I do love having redundancy. 1 is none, 2 is 1, 3 is better, right? But also with the go bag, with your go bag, with the thought is less is more. My bag is just a standard day pack size. It's packed, and it's pretty heavy, but it's not like a full size mountaineering backpack. Yeah, it's really about that size.
This is my go bag.
That's excellent.
And of course another
in this bag.
right, exactly. More like a traditional week-long backpacking pack. And I think that's what most people, like a rucksack, whatever you want to call it. I think that's where kind of most of the preppers out there are they got a 50-pound, they're packed 50 to 75 pounds, something like that. And it's something that, and maybe they get that because they were in the military, and that's I think that's the case for a lot of preppers out there, because they had the rucksack, they rucked with the big heavy packs. I can't do that. It can't go very far. But of course, my other thought is movement, being able to move and be able to not be stationary could be important. I mean, it depends on the scenario, right? If it's a fire, okay, right. But if it's a true emergency and your house burns down and you've got to get out, I mean, you've got to be able to move. And so having the right vehicle, having the right, just the right loadout, if I guess I put it that way, in your pack and your EDC, and then having being minimalistic at this point, that's, I guess, kind of where my mind went as I put my list together.
Well, I think you have it. I mean, the book that you guys are going to put out soon, Ready Radius, I think that's a perfect example of this. Like you don't need to have 10 things in your of the same redundancy in your 3, in your grab and go. You need to have enough in your grab and go that you can get to the next level of stuff where you may have some redundancy in that next thing. Like you might have your grab and go where it's in your closet, you grab the backpack and you go get in your truck. Now your truck has a couple other things that you need that are redundant to what's in your, but that grab and go bag is there in case you need it. And if the car doesn't burn down in the fire, you now have your grab and go bag and your car. And hopefully if you have a little bit of time before you have to grab and go, you can grab a couple of your items there. They will give you some time to really camp out for a couple of days somewhere. You know, you have time to grab a tent or some shelter or something else as your house is burning down. So hopefully remembering that radius, like, okay, I have the gear I need just for this, the minimal, and then I have enough to get me to the next place where I have more gear or more things that I can use to help survive. I think that's, if I had to restart, I would start with food, water and food, and then I would definitely start restocking my grab and go bag, and I would be a lot more efficient with it this time.
So I'm going to argue against that, though. Like, we're at a point where, it makes more sense to go lighter, right? The wiser you get, the more knowledge you have, the less you need to carry with you. Yes. But if I'm going to go heavier and I've got my car accessible, or if I've got a large bag and I've got a lot of extra space in it, fill it.
Go heavy.
Even if it's too heavy to carry. And here's why. When you get out of the house or you get out of the city, you can regroup and say, okay, I'm going to pare down and say, okay, I don't need these things anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll have a clear enough head, hopefully, at that point where you can actually make a good decision. Okay, I don't need all this stuff. But what if you needed something that you stripped out thinking I can figure that out later? Don't ever play that game. And that's why I'm trying to bring up this word of caution, because I would rather you have that 50 extra pounds that you really can't hike with long distance to get to the car, to get to like just across the street or wherever you need to go to just regroup. Now, if you can go advance and get modulared, like Shane has done, like our friend Cache Valley Prepper, like I'm sort of modularized, but if you can get to that point where you're just like, okay, here's all my stuff, here's what I need, huck it into the bag and go. Like my large bag is kind of that way. I've got a few things in there, and then I take my little bag and I dump it into the big bag if I need more stuff. Right. So if I know I'm going for a longer period, I just dump my little bag into the big bag and take off, because my big bag has more long-term tent and rope, and not tent, but tarps and ropes and additional things, including snares. Like if I'm going to get stuck out in the wild for a little while, it's got more of that stuff in it in my transition to another place.
Well, kind of like the example of, you carry a pistol to get to your rifle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
you have a rifle to get to your cannon.
And your rifle to get to your bug out location where you got all stay. Anyway,
your rocket launcher.
The other way I think about it is, okay, in my go bag I have a little compact wood stove with some fuel tablets. Right, I'm not going to carry a full-on wood gas, butane stove. That's going to be in my vehicle, or that's going to be in my next location. So, like you say, Scott, you have some modularity to it, where instead of having everything in one bag, I have maybe 2 or 3 bags, and I'm going to take this component from this bag and this component from that bag, because this is in my mind what I need at the moment, and I'm going to go. But it's going to be quick because, like you say, they're modular, they're little components, smaller bags within larger bags, and you can compile those and say, like, one of the things when I go out for work, I can be a couple 100 miles away from home, but I'll have everything in there, but in my truck that I need, but I won't need everything to get me back home. So I can take my go bag that I have with me, and then I can say, okay, I don't need this, but I do need this, and add that to my bag. And in modular units where it's quick and easy, and I don't have to be searching for things, and then pack it and go. And I know that's kind of what the ready radius is. That's kind of what you're talking about as well, to where you have some modularity, and that makes things a little complicated, right? It's not as simplistic, but if you're able to set up your radius that way, and depending on where you're going, right? If I have to go to my property, which I'm a couple 100 plus miles away, I have not set up a method to where I have a radius. It's me, my truck, and the road, right? and then the bug out property. So I need to contemplate what I could do to create another layer of redundancy between here and there if I had to hoof it at some point.
Well, I think that's a really good point. Like, if you've got your basics set up, and if a different scenario changes things, it's going to change what you want to carry, and that's where modularization makes sense. But if you can go heavy, always go heavy. Meaning, if you've got your vehicle,
yeah, absolutely.
exfiltrate, like take all the extra stuff you can get out of the house, get it into the vehicle with your kids and your wife and your siblings and whoever else you're going to pack the vehicle with, right? Get it all in there and then go get to a safer space, and then you can reassess what you need. But yeah, like we've got all of our bins and totes with our main prep tools and gear, and like our cooking, our fire, like everything set up in almost like camp bins. So if we're gonna go camping, we just take our prep stuff. And when we're done camping, we resupply those bins and put them back where we got them.
I think
so we can just load all that into the car with our prep stuff, and that's kind of how we modularized. And so you just open the garage door, grab everything off the rack, throw it in the vehicle, and if we have time to hook up the trailer, we can load more, but if the fire's too bad, right, and we got to get out of the way, like you got to prioritize, like don't risk your life for your stuff.
Something that just came up as we're talking here is that organizing your stuff in a way that you have better access to it. I've talked with a lot of people, I'm sure you guys have too, that I was like, okay, well, they'll come and they'll ask, what's the first thing I should do to get started in my preps? And I'll say, well, get your 90-day pantry, get your, how much well, first of all, I'll say, how much do you have already? And they're like, I don't know, it's in this closet over there, it's up on that shelf over there, it's in the garage somewhere up there. And I'm like, okay, let's get all that organized first. So if I'm going to restart my preps, like everything's gone, I have to restart, I'm going to organize it in a way that I know how to get to it. I can get to it quickly. I have my 90-day pantry in one location. I have my long term. I have my dehydrated food on one shelf. I have my freeze dried food on another shelf. I have my wheat and my grains and my beans on a different shelf, so that I know, okay, this is where everything is, and it's all organized in kind of the same genre of foods and things are in the same reasonably same area. Like I have in my I have a short-term pantry, which is my 90-day pantry, and then I have my long-term pantry. And my long-term pantry has like first a bunch of prep stuff in there. And it's got all my Augustin Farms cans, all my number 10 cans, all that is all in that other area, so that I know, hey, this is where I need to go for that once we start doing long-term storage stuff. And then I have, of course, in my garage, like you shared, do you hook up the trailer and go? Well, if the trailer's over there and behind all this stuff and you got all this junk piled in it because you were not, organized, you're going to be up a creek. So the point is to keep things organized and in good spots and good places so that you can grab it and go quickly.
Yeah. Thinking back to my EDC, taking that in, the other idea is that I had with having what you need on you at all times. It's kind of the bushcrafting mentality, right? You have the tools that you need to get the other thing, whatever else you may need. So you're able to construct a shelter with the tools that you have on you. Just to give you a simple example. So, and of course that's difficult to do if you have a lot of kids and, and have, a larger family to take care of. If it's just yourself, that's pretty simple, right? Mm-hmm. You got your go bag, you got your EDC, and you can, if you're resourceful and you have some knowledge, then you can survive for a while, right? And make things happen. But again, of course, it really depends on the scenario. And of course, this is just a practice, right? Just trying to figure out, okay, what would I do? And, I'm definitely going to tweak my list according to what you guys have shared as well. And I've made some of my own notes as well. And I'm like, okay, I need to do that. I'm going to make that change. I'm going to be more organized. What's another note I wrote down here is, my insurances, I do have inventory of my food storage and so forth, but will I be able to have access to it if there's a fire or something like that? Where do I have that? So, I have a thumb drive that I keep in my bag with my IDs on it and so forth. And, and so I realized, I need to put those things on that thumb drive. So I always have that inventory with me on that thumb drive.
So I keep my inventory on a thumb drive, but also, and I update that every April and every October, but I also keep it on a Google Sheet. Shared with my wife.
So it's in the cloud.
It's on the server in some facility somewhere on Earth that we call the cloud, right? For those tech guys that are like, it's in the cloud. but yeah, it's somewhere that I can access it from any, online computer anywhere I go, right? But yeah, it's like, what EDC do I have? What do I like? I would also really spend more time less focusing on like the freeze dried foods and all that other stuff, and I'd really spend more time focusing on seasonings,
Mm-hmm.
way more than we did the first time. Like, we had all this stuff and we're like, let's start cooking with it. Let's start making meals. And I'm like, how are we going to flavor this? And what I've learned about where to get foods, like, if I'm going to buy a lot of seasonings, I'm going to go to the Oriental markets. I'm going to go to the Spanish markets, because you can get a ton more, and it's usually a better quality, better flavor for a lot less.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's what I would do on that same topic is, when we got started with our food storage, yes, we do the bulk rice and beans. No regrets about any of that. We do have a lot of freeze dried, and a lot of it is the Augustin Farms, which is, honestly, it's a lower quality food. It really is, and it wasn't very well thought out on my part as to the quality. I do have a pretty good a ratio of pancake mixes to bread mixes, those types of things. I think I've got that pretty good, but I would probably revisit the quality and do a little better research on the quality of food, something, more organic, more clean, better ingredients, better nutrition. Cause that's honestly, that's what counts in the end, is to have better nutrition, better calories, that way. And so I would probably lean away, exactly, something like Mountain House. Obviously, that's much more expensive, right, than the Augustin Farms, and that's obviously for a reason, right? Augustin Farms and those types are less expensive for the reason. It's not, the quality of food is not as good. Nesquik.
I've got tubs and tubs of this stuff. Like,
yeah,
a lot of people roll their eyes, but I'm like, dude, my kids, they're little. They want chocolate milk, right? So this is like super easy, and you buy a few of these. This is going to last me all year. Right. But like,
in our house, that lasts like a week.
Well, it's because I have 10 of these. That's how it's going to last a year. But it's like, and you keep first in, first out rule. But like, everything we're talking about, guys, as you're listening to this, hopefully you're taking notes and you're putting ideas down. But like, yeah, like, you can buy a crap ton of bad food. But as Paris said earlier, like, focus on that 90-day pantry when you start buying your food. What am I eating all the time? What does my family eat regularly? What are they willing to eat in a pinch? I've got one kid that if it's not popsicles, he doesn't want it.
Dang.
But I can get him to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I can get him to eat pasta. I can get him to eat things. It takes some coaxing. But if I'm like, hey, you hungry? He's like, yeah, I want a popsicle. I'm like, no.
Yeah, you have to have food.
You can't have Otter Pops all day. Man cannot live off Otter Pops alone, people. So when you're thinking about your prep, think about your situation, and then make sure you're keeping track of what you have, how you use it, when you use it. If you have food storage that's been there for more than 2 years, why? Unless it's freeze dried and it's like long-term stuff, your pantry should never go longer than a year. You should be rotating that stuff, and you should be looking at all your other preps and thinking, okay, is this something I use? If it's not something I use, if I haven't used it in a couple of years, if you're faced with a situation where you've got to replace some things, that's not a priority to replace.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's, I think, the biggest thing I can remind people as we close out this episode is, if it's something you don't use now, you're not likely going to use it in the future either. But it doesn't mean you won't.
Mm-hmm.
I've got hand tools just in case, but that's not the priority. If I lost everything today, I'd get the stuff I can use today or tomorrow right away. And then I'd start expanding back to historical, fantastic tools that last generations, right? So think about those things. Focus on what your family's needs are. If you have questions on what that is, join our emergency prep and self-reliance group on Facebook. And guys, remember, like, we have free resources and downloads on our site, preppertalkradio.com. And if you want some cool gear and you want some cool, like, cooked 25-year shelf life meats, you need to go check out our friends, survivalfrog.com. They have just perfectly cooked, tasty, ready to eat meats, chicken, ground beef, and shredded beef. You can get it on their website, survivalfrog.com. Use the promo code PrepperTalk. It'll get you another 10% off at checkout. And guys, thanks for being part of our show each and every week. We put out a couple episodes a week just to try to help get you better understanding and just aware of more options in your personal preparedness. But thank you for being part of our audience, our group, our family, and stay awake, stay aware, and stay ready-minded. See you on the next episode.
See you next week.
Take care, guys.